Let's see. Do I remember how to do this? I think I say something like, welcome along to
what was it? What was your catchphrase?
You just interrupt. I was just trying it. Now I don't know if I can remember. Welcome. I think I said something like, welcome along to another episode. It was not Heidi Ho. It's the second time you've interrupted me. Hey, we're off to a good start, folks. This is going to be an attempt at episode 73, and we're going to have to come up with all new things that we say because it's been so long. Mm-hmm. Blake, when's the last time we released an episode? Do you even know?
I do know. I know the exact date.
Okay, what is it?
It was your birthday, November 21st, 2023.
Wow.
So
I was 24 years old. That is incredible.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
A little bit.
I've aged a bit since then, but we're back, and we're actually really excited to be back. Sorry for the long absence. Mm-hmm. But we have some really awesome stuff in store this season, starting off with our first guest of the season. I want to always call her Darby Latimer because that's the beginning of my relationship with her. But that's not her name, and that would not be good if I didn't call
legally,
her name.
No.
Not legally. Her name is Darby Gleason, and she is actually right here in the house with us. But I got to tell you something first, Blake, because I think there's something our audience needs to know before I guess depending on the timing of the release of this episode, there's something major that's going to happen on our staff. Mm-hmm. While we're recording it, we're getting ready to start the Sweet 16. It's March Madness.
Yeah.
And we've got this little thing going here at the church on our staff where it's a little competition. Yeah. And I would say it's awakened some significant competitive fever. Would you say that?
I would say that.
Yeah. And the winner, there's a nice little prize, little gift card, go out to eat, it's fun. But there's also a prize for the biggest loser, the worst bracket. And that prize is that person has to camp out one night, overnight at the church. And they have to do Blair Witch Project style. For my age audience, you know what that is. For younger audience, you might can look it up. But basically, they have to do these vlog entries of their journey.
Some video diaries throughout the
And
stay.
Blake, I think right now, if it holds, I think you're in last place.
I am in last place.
But you're hopeful that you're not going to end up there.
I am extremely confident knowing that I will not end up. Actually, but if I do, I'm also okay.
I think you made a comment like, wow, there's some work I could get done.
I could really get a lot of work done up here at night. I usually try to get here early in the morning so people don't bother me. So being here all night long.
So this actually may be a prize for you if you lose.
As much as I would love to, I don't think it's going to be me.
Blake, who do you think it's going to be?
Without a doubt, I think it's going to be Becky Weems. Okay. And there's some concern that she may destroy the church building. So
yep,
we don't know what's going to happen.
So we're asking for prayer for the church building. And by the time you listen to this,
it may be done.
It may have already been done, and hopefully we'll be able to release some footage to you. About those events.
Yeah, we may have to interview the loser or something.
Yeah, but you know what? None of that matters because we've got Darby Gleason in the house, and we ought to get to that interview.
That's what people are here for, not for us.
Let's go. Okay, I said before, I don't even know if I said the name of the podcast. I got so jumbled by you at the beginning. But this is Sweet Tea and Coffee. We are back for the 5th season, episode 73. We've got Darby in the house with us. And Darby, normally the first question we ask people is related to the theme of the show, Sweet Tea and Coffee. And just as a reminder, the whole point of this show is what would conversations look like if you were to sit down with somebody and have a cup of coffee or sweet tea on the back porch and have a conversation. That's what we're kind of modeling. But it got competitive, as many things do. And it became a competition of sweet tea or coffee, and it got out of hand at certain points in the show. So normally that's the first thing we ask. So I want to ask you, two things. Okay. Number one, sweet tea or coffee or both, and kind of what's your go-to? And then number two, how do you feel about our competition? You were mentioning that churches at night and sleeping over that it's not your favorite.
If it's Becky, I'm so sorry.
If it's Becky, yeah. Sweet tea or coffee?
Yeah, in the mornings I'm a coffee person. I need a hot coffee.
Okay.
But I've recently become obsessed with HTO. So
that's my go-to
shout
tea
out
place.
to
That
HTO.
counts.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah,
So-
Blake's like
What's your-
clockwork on certain meeting nights. He
If it's
always comes in with
if there's an
HTM.
elder meeting on Wednesday night, I'm gonna run and get a tea to make
I don't
it through.
blame you.
What's your go-to flavor?
I get the wedding cake, which is
Wow.
it's so good.
Oh my
Sounds like it's
So
super
good.
sweet.
Oh my goodness.
It's not. Well, so I make it on my own. If
Okay.
they make it, it is sweet. But it has coconut and sweet almond in it.
Okay, yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, I get that almond
Yeah.
green tea a
Yep.
lot too. Yeah.
So good. I'm a coconut girly. So
Okay.
Wedding cake.
wedding cake. Try it
They
out.
have like
Try it
secret
out.
things that you can.
That sounds
mix
like
together.
the ultimate
Yeah.
sweet tea.
Well, they have those little menus inside. It's
Yeah.
on one of those.
Yeah.
It's really
All
yummy.
right,
You
check
should
it
try
out.
it. Yeah.
Local establishment.
I know.
HTM.
They're doing great stuff over there.
Very cool. All right, so I think that probably lands solidly on the tea side of things. Would you
I
say?
mean, it can
Score one
be it
for
can
the
be
tea?
both. I'm
Okay.
okay with
All right,
conceding that.
We're dropping
He's
the competition.
He's the one that likes the
I
competition.
think, yeah.
I was going to
think
say the
maybe-
competition comes
Yeah.
from that guy.
I think so. I think so. Okay. Well, Darby, goodness, this is going to be tricky because we have so much that we could talk about because we've known you for so long. Personally, I've
time.
known you for a long time. Love your family. I've
Thanks.
known
Me too.
your family for a long time. But give us an idea, just quickly bring people into how you arrived in Nacogdoches and more specifically how you got connected at Fredonia Hill.
Yeah. So I am 3 out of 4 kiddos, and both of my older siblings came to SFA. I don't really know how they found SFA. My oldest brother, Parker, came here. Again, don't know how he found it. And then Paige, I think, just kind of followed in his footsteps. And then I was like, well, got to go to college and guess I'll go to SFA. So I went
I feel
to-
like people say that a lot.
Oh, come on.
but I loved it.
As an alumni, I can say that.
Yeah, I
think
don't
it's
know.
legal
I'm
to
not
say
saying
that.
anything.
The guy with the Texas Tech shirt on over
That's
there.
right, repping the
repping,
logo.
Real bold over there. So then I came over here and loved it. But again, following in my siblings' footsteps, somehow Parker found Fredonia, and then Paige came to Fredonia. And so there were a bunch of people who knew my family. And so when I got to NAC, they made sure I came to Fredonia. So I was just fully embraced with Fredonia community the second I got here. So there was like no other choice for me. It was home and it was family, and I'd been visiting for years.
Yeah, when you would come to see
When I
siblings.
would come to see Parker and Paige, and so it was kind of a no-brainer. I just came to SFA and went to Fredonia. Didn't even think twice
What
about
was, what
it.
was the experience like being here at SFA and doing your college years with your older 2 siblings also here?
Well, so we weren't here at the same time, but because Parker was so involved in Fredonia, when I came to Fredonia, I was Parker's little sister. And Paige was in a sorority, and I joined the same sorority. And so in that sorority, I was Paige's little sister. So I was fully just in the shadow, which I loved because I admire both my older siblings so much that I was so proud that people were associating me with those 2. So I kind of came in having a name already made for me, which I was great with. That was fine by me.
So y'all didn't overlap at all?
No, because Paige is 4 years older than me.
Okay. I don't
So
know why
she
I
was
thought
out
you
of
had-
here by the
okay.
time I got here.
Okay. Now there's rumor. I don't know if you want to do any sort of promo, but there's rumor of a podcast that's upcoming with you and your sister. What were you saying earlier?
You didn't
that
think
the
he'd
name-
actually
Oh,
ask you
listen,
about
I
that.
didn't.
What, did you?
didn't.
What would the name be? The 2 sisters talking.
I think
or
it
what?
was called like the fun, like 2 fun girls, or like so literally. She came up with the name and I can't remember it. But sisters just talk, and we FaceTime all the time. And I mean, I can't even tell you what we talk about. And so she was like, "We need to do this with a microphone. Maybe make some money or something."
So folks,
I might be picking your brain a little.
yeah, be on the lookout for Paige and Darby's
Yes.
upcoming project.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Project.
That may be named. We don't know what it'll be named.
I'll
but
keep you posted.
Yeah, keep us
I'll let you know.
posted. Okay, so you obviously you kind of make your own way as you get here. I know you said in shadow, but you become very distinctly involved, and even to the point where in 2017 ish, you're involved in our Armor Bearer program.
Yeah.
And what in terms of just your spiritual development, your relationship with the Lord, where is that in your college years? Because for a lot of people, their college years is a time of really trying to figure it out. Maybe they were raised a certain way and they're either rejecting that or they're embracing that kind of uniquely on their own. For you, you seem to kind of just get here and plug right into church. And what is your faith looking like at that point in your life?
Yeah, so when I came here, I was very excited to get out of my house and not like to leave my family, but to just kind of, be a little birdie, fly out of the nest.
Yeah.
And so I was so excited that when I finally got here, I realized, I'm alone.
Yeah,
and I don't like it. So honestly, that kind of broke me. I'm very close with both my parents and all of my siblings, and so not having any of them around was really, really hard. So I did grow up in the church. My mom worked for the church for years, and we were very involved. So coming here and going to one was no problem, but it was now my choice to go to one rather than going because I was the pastor's assistant's daughter or whatever. Yeah. But I was completely broken and felt completely alone and lonely just because I didn't have the stability that I was used to in my family around me all the time. So thankfully I found that family in Fredonia, through Melina and all the other ABs that were there at the time. And then just making my own friends as I got here, I became more and more at home here, and the Lord, met me there in that place. I just remember sitting on my dorm floor crying because I just miss my mom so much. And that is the moment that it became my faith rather than my family's faith.
Interesting.
So I ran after Jesus rather than going because that's what you do.
Yeah, and that was kind of grounded in you in your background, but then you kind of had to, in that moment, you have to make that choice for yourself. It's interesting you mentioned community, because I think this is going to be a theme that's going to come up as we continue to go through your story, just the role that different people have played in your life and the development of your understanding of really family and what that means in the body of Christ. What were you, coming from such a tight-knit, close, wonderful, healthy family, what was it like to have to reconstruct? And I don't mean reconstruct as in, a rejection of your home and your past, but I mean, now you've got to figure out family with all of these new people in a strange place. What was that process like? You mentioned a few names but just how did you learn to embrace that element of family at a younger age?
Honestly, so the Lord has just very clearly taken care of me my entire life. But by a very weird circumstance, the pastor that was my youth pastor growing up lived in Nacogdoches while I was at school here. And so I was very close with their family. So I would go over there once a week, and they just kind of took me under their wing. And so if I was homesick, that was a place I felt safe. But they also they were really, really, because he used to be the youth pastor and they, knew young kids and all that stuff. They loved when I would bring people. So it almost felt like, hey, this is like another version of my home because they're so safe to me that I'm like bringing people back into my world a little bit. Yeah. So there are certain friends that I made here that I would bring there, and that almost kind of united us in more of a family bond. And I've told Melina this before, but she played a very crucial role in me feeling safe here in Nacogdoches. Because I had met her through my sister-in-law beforehand. When I got here, she just made sure I wasn't by myself or isolating or, running away. She would pick me up for random things. We had a sleepover in a twin bed in the AB house before I even knew what that was.
Was she an armor bearer at the time?
She was an armor bearer at the time.
That's interesting. Okay.
And so she just really made sure that I was taken care of and didn't, kind of hide away in the college community and all the things going on with that. So honestly, the couple's name was the Campbells and then Melina were the two things that made me really feel like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. This is good. Yeah. And then, a few crucial friends along the way.
Sure.
But those are the main ones that made me feel like I could survive.
Yeah. That's cool to hear. Just in many ways, it's simple hospitality played a major role in your spiritual health.
Well, and I missed being in a home.
Yeah.
A dorm is great and you can make it your own, but it's not a home. It's not a home cooked meal.
Yeah.
And I missed that
Yeah.
very, very much.
Yeah,
and
that's
sitting on
cool.
a couch, you know.
Cool. So as you are in that journey, that progression through your collegiate years, somewhere in you, kind of this, I don't know if you would articulate it as a call to ministry or not. I think you've used those words later on. I heard you use those words later on in life, but something, whatever you would call it, begins to stir in you to emerge as a leader, feeling like God's calling you to lead in areas of ministry, and so you go through our AB program. What was that like for you to discern God's voice in your life as it relates to leadership and participation in ministry, and what that would look like for you? How was that taking shape in those close to the end of your undergraduate years?
Honestly, that came as such a surprise for me. The whole AV thing.
Yeah.
I think obviously me and Melina had spent a lot of time together, and she was
Yeah.
kind of over that a little bit at the time when I was doing it. And so when she asked me, I was completely caught off guard. Like, had no idea that they saw me in that kind of light. And so that kind of created space for me to think of like, okay, maybe I actually have a role to play. Maybe I don't just need to be going about my business. I need to be paying attention. And if they see, I just respected and loved Melina so much. And so her asking me, I was like, I want to honor her in whatever way I can. And if she sees me in this role, then I need to start seeing myself in this role. And I was very secure in my faith, very passionate about the Lord, but had never been kind of championed forward. And so she was really the first person to see me in that way. And there was not any hesitation when she asked. I was like, yep, okay, got it. I'll do it. Whatever you want, I'll do it.
Wow.
And it turned out to be some of the best days of my life, and some of the most formative things for my faith that, I even hold on to now. Like, me and those AB girls are still just as close as we were in the house.
It was a unique group for sure.
Yes. It was a really wonderful group. So it's really because she saw something in me that I had never even tried to view of myself.
I that's interesting. And, we, in obviously the work that we're in, we, on a pretty regular basis, have conversations with people where either they're inquiring of what our journey has been like in terms of call to ministry, or they're sorting through that themselves. And I think if I were to kind of caricature the way that I think people assume that happens, is that there's this moment where the sky opens up and God says, you will be a worship pastor,
Yeah.
And that really serves as the beginning, and that somehow you're supposed to be able to go back to that moment and articulate your journey from there. And I'm not saying that doesn't sometimes happen, that the beginning of that journey is God's voice in your life, in a unique way. For some people, that is certainly the story. I wouldn't discredit that for a second. But what you're describing is different, and I think doesn't get talked about as much, which is, and I think what I hear you saying, and I'd love for you to flesh this out a little bit. I think what I hear you saying is you were taking the next obedient step, and for you, that next obedient step wasn't even necessarily because of something you saw in yourself or heard from the Lord. It was something that somebody else really spoke into your life and said, I see this in you. And so you said, okay, well then I'm going to take that next step. And then discerning a call to ministry was happening as you were taking those steps. It wasn't, doesn't sound like it was this all at once sort of thing that then you took a different path. Is that a fair description?
Absolutely. And I've had one of those, big moments where the Lord tells me to go in. I've had that, and this was not that.
Yeah.
It was very much so just trusting her obedience to the Holy Spirit, and knowing that she's not just going to ask me to do this because she thinks it'd be fun.
Right.
Like, she is doing something that the Lord has told her to do. And I trust the Holy Spirit in her life, and that she listens to the Holy Spirit. And so I was like, okay, so then this must be something that the Lord wants me to start pursuing. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah, I think that's, again, I don't know, I think this will probably be a theme as we continue to talk through your story. But again, just that element of of community and the necessity of wise people that are highly invested in your life, that are seeking the Lord on your behalf, giving them space to speak into your life, and the way that God uses their voices to help us even discern what He's doing in our life. So it was even in community that you began to walk in a call to
community
ministry.
has been a crucial part of my faith,
Yeah.
and it's still something that I'm learning how to navigate. Really utilizing community, but I would not be where I am today without the community that the Lord gifted me.
Yeah.
Way back in my early college days.
Well, speaking of community, you decide to enter into the covenant of community, which is marriage. Woohoo. I don't know. That's a really bad segue.
Where are you going with this?
What an
I don't know
old
where
grumpy
that was
pastor
either.
way of segueing into.
So you got married.
I don't know. I got to work. We're rusty. This is episode 1 of season 5. But that's my segue. So, so tell us how you and Carrie meet, and how did y'all begin to date and get married?
So we met. I transferred to SFA spring. I think that was 2016 is what I figured out. So I was a sophomore. It was spring semester, and he was in my Health 101 class. I was a kinesiology major and had to take basic health as an intro class. And he sat in front of me, and I was hooked.
Well, but I don't understand how y'all ever started a conversation. He's so shy,
introspective,
and
no jokes, nothing. Yeah.
First word spoken. Do you remember? Do you remember how you guys? How did he have to break the ice and speak to you, or were you bold enough? How did it?
Well, this is actually a debate that we have.
Oh, good. We want to be in that. Let's
feel free
hear
to take my side.
You have the microphone, so you can.
Yeah,
So
he's
I
not
have
here.
the power.
Yeah.
I have the power.
You do.
So we actually met. He had a girlfriend when I first got to school here. He was dating somebody, and we were at Bonita. I was at Bonita with a different friend, and she was just introducing me to a bunch of people, knowing that I was about to come to Nacogdoches. And they were friends, and she introduced me to him and said, "Hey, this is my friend Carrie." But he was with his girlfriend. And so he's like, "I don't remember that. We didn't meet at Bonita." I'm like, "We met there." Because I was like, "That's a beautiful man."
Oh my goodness! Don't say that. We're gonna have to cut that out. His head's gonna get way too big.
I know. But he says that we met in the health class.
Okay,
But we didn't.
he's wrong.
He's wrong.
Okay, let that be said. We're gonna repeat that. Carrie is
Carrie
wrong.
Gleason was wrong.
Okay.
But he's a beautiful man.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm not repeating that. I'll leave you to that. Okay, so how long did y'all date? That was Health Class 101. That's like your sophomore year?
Yeah, that was my sophomore year. So we didn't start dating then. We were just friends.
Okay.
We were friends for about 2.5 years before we actually started dating. So we started dating Valentine's Day of 2018.
Okay.
So it was a while.
And you got married
The day
I'm
after
putting you
your
on the spot.
birthday, November 22nd of 2019.
Okay.
So like a year and some change later, we got married.
Okay.
But we knew we were going to get married within a month.
Okay. And you and the first part of your marriage, you're off. You get married and you go.
Went away.
You went away.
We went to your lands.
My lands, which was not my lands at the time.
Yeah, no.
Parker was there.
Traded.
Yeah, we traded. So went to Sundown, which is so interesting. The many connections back to West Texas and Sundown. That is actually another theme on this podcast: the random connections back to West Texas. But you have one of those. You worked with your brother in ministry.
Yes.
Carrie is coaching and teaching at the local school.
Yep.
And then you guys come back to Nacogdoches. What brought you back?
We were honestly we had just had Gracie. So we just had a daughter, and we loved having Parker and his family nearby. But like I said, community had played such a crucial role in our lives that we didn't really feel like we had it there. And so we were just asking the Lord to give us some form of community. And then, so Carrie was just kind of eyeballing, jobs closer to family. I had struggled with some postpartum depression, and so I wanted to be closer to help and support. And And then he saw listing for Central Heights, and he was like, hey, I'm friends with the athletic director. Actually, let me just pick his brain. And he called to pick his brain and was offered the job.
Wow.
On the phone call. And he was like, okay. So then we moved back to Nacogdoches.
That's crazy.
With our little lady.
Was that just a total shock and surprise to go,
goodness.
oh my gosh, we're going back to Nacogdoches?
Yeah, I never expected to move back here. And not that I didn't want to. It was just like, that's where you go to college, and then you leave and you don't go back. Like it's a college town. But we were thrilled because so many of my people were still here. Just that played a role in my college and faith walk and all the things. So we were thrilled to jump right back into Fredonia and people and trees.
Yeah, trees. Come on, there's a shot in West Texas.
Less wind.
Less wind and dust and trees.
Yeah.
Okay, so now there's so much we could talk about. I would love to ask about, that reintegration into church family now that your family looks different. You're married and are raising a sweet kiddo. But I'm going to move forward a little faster because honestly, I think the thing that we were talking about this before we started recording. I think the thing that many people around here know, there are some that are familiar with you in your days as a SFA student, but most of our people kind of know you after you moved back.
As a Gleason.
Yeah, they don't use that Latimer name like I do. I literally had to stop and correct myself every single time.
So does Ashley. Ashley calls me Latimer too.
It might still be on our phones that way.
I never changed my phone. I don't know.
It is. Yeah.
I think my sister-in-law is still Blag on my phone. I still haven't changed that. Anyway, so I think most of our church family kind of knows you after you guys moved back and began to reintegrate into our the life of our church, and you had not been back that long. You guys had moved back and started, and of course, you dove right into community, began to become a part of the church family, and then kind of what would have to be the wildest set of circumstances
oh my goodness,
that you could probably ever draw up begins to unfold. And I think that's when people think about you, this is the story that kind of pops in their mind. And yet the only time I think you've really talked about it has been, I was at a women's conference, which sounds strange. I'm the pastor of this church, and so
I was there too.
So Blake and I were at a women's conference together. I don't know what that
always. We're always there.
So and I came actually to that session because I wanted to hear you speak.
Oh,
and
thanks.
To my knowledge, that was the first time I think that publicly you kind of unpacked the whole wild journey.
Yes.
This may be kind of the second time that more publicly that people aren't going to get just bits and pieces. They're going to have a chance to hear the story. So take us. I don't even know where to ask you to start, except for this wild thing starts to unfold in 2023-ish, June 2023.
Yes.
Tell us about, bring us into the day that life kind of changed.
Yeah. So we moved back here the July before, so it was just shy of a year that we had been back. I remember it so well. It's insane. We had just had our daughter's second birthday the weekend before, then my appointment, I don't know what day of the week that was, but it was, the birthday party, and then we were going to go to Houston to have an appointment for this weird thing on my face. And I'd had a doctor's appointment about this before, but they said it was nothing to worry about. And my mother, which everybody should listen to their moms. That's also a theme of this podcast. The theme of my story, anyways, to listen to your mother. Had been hounding me to get this bump right under my right earlobe looked at. And I'm stubborn and I don't go to the doctor. I do now, but I didn't go to the doctor. And so I'd finally, said yes and went to the doctor on June 1st. Went to a doctor in Houston. And by June 7th, I had received a cancer diagnosis.
6 days.
6 days, received a cancer diagnosis and had surgery scheduled.
Now, for people that don't know, you're how old at the time? I mean, I just trying to...
Oh, gosh, how old am I right now? I was 26.
Okay.
I was about to turn 27. I had my birthday right after my surgery.
So you're 26. You've got a 2-year-old.
Yes.
and you get the craziest, most unexpected. What is going through?
Yeah.
I mean, you get that call 6 days later.
It
What's
was
going through your
very
mind?
surreal.
Yeah.
And I found out, I mean, as you know, I kind of found out on my own, which now looking back, I'm thankful for because it allowed me to process at home with Carrie.
Yeah, I even said get a call, but that's not the way it
Yeah,
works
I
anymore.
didn't get a phone
Your
call.
test results are all online, and you look that kind of
Yeah,
stuff up, and so that's how you found out.
Yeah, I had gotten an email that they did a biopsy of it, a needle biopsy, and I got an email that my results were ready. And so I actually probably found out maybe 2 days before. June 7th is when I got a call from my doctor. He had been out of town. So I found out I was coaching at the gym and got an email. I was like, oh, I wonder what this is. And it said actinic cell carcinoma. And I was like, what does that mean? And I Googled it when I got home and realized what it was and just sat on my kitchen floor and cried.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Carrie got home and I had to tell him. But I'm looking back again, I'm very thankful for those like maybe 1 to 2 days at home with Carrie, because we kind of got to just in our little cell got to process what in the world was happening, and then form questions for when we knew we would hear from my doctor. You know, he had to call at some point. Eventually, he had to talk to me, and he did call and was very apologetic about not being there when the results were there, not knowing what it would be, but it allowed us time to form questions and not be so high emotion and panicky on the phone call with him and be practical. And then, so June 7th, we scheduled my surgery for June 30th.
So within a matter of a month, you're headed to surgery.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about, we keep going back to community. You talked a little bit about having the ability to process that on the kitchen floor by yourself. And then Carrie comes home and you process that. And then, so there's this like slow expansion of people in the journey. What was that process like, letting people in?
Honestly, it was really, really hard. I am one of those people that does not like to be a quote unquote problem.
Yeah.
I don't really like to be looked at at all. So it was a very slow, and it's also crazy words to tell somebody, especially when you're having a hard time wrapping your mind around the sentence itself. So it started, very small with like, literally, I think Ashley was one of the very first people that I told to try and form a sentence about it. And then thankfully, I had people who asked if they could share with certain people, which was very, very helpful for me because I don't want to tell everybody, I don't want to have the same, hey, I have this, I have this. So that's kind of how it started spreading, which was great for me because it still gave me the space to process. And the people who knew about it, who were informing the other people that needed to know at the time, filtered questions. And, so then I still had my space to process whatever I needed to process. So it played out really, really intimately, I feel like.
Yeah.
Which was perfect
Yeah.
for what I needed.
Now, I assume it at some point, and correct me if this is inaccurate, but I assume at some point with surgery coming, and I'm sure they lay out, here's going to be the steps, here's what recovery looks like, here's what, the generic word of treatment, here's what that journey is going to look like. I assume kind of at some point you sort of transition to battle mode where I'm now going to have to face this thing. And what was it like, and how did you experience the Lord leading up to that moment where it's like, okay, now we're getting after it. I'm going to actually have the surgery. The physical things are going to start to take place. You go from, I imagine you go from, there's this idea of this thing that I have, to now we're battling it and I'm feeling it. And how did you experience God's presence and provision in that process where you began to really take on the fight?
Honestly, there was no like moment of like, I'm strong, I can do this. There was nothing like that. I kind of switched into autopilot because I had a 2-year-old
Yeah.
who I was working at the time, but I mean, I still am, but she's always with me.
Yeah, 2-year-olds don't stop being
No,
2-year-olds.
they don't. And she has no idea what's happening. She
Yeah.
saw me crying on the kitchen floor, but she's like, Mommy?
Yeah.
She had no idea. So I just kind of went into autopilot of the things that still needed to be done to take care of her and, my work and things like that. So as far as like my heart and my emotion in the Lord's presence and those things, I was empty. Like
Yeah.
I was a ghost of a person
Yeah.
at that point. And so like saying that the Lord will sustain you, the Lord fully sustained me every single day. I can't really remember a lot of those days in between. It's all kind of hazy because I was just thrown off my game,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And taking care of Gracie and loving on my daughter still and wanting to be a good wife and good worker and all these things, the Lord allowed those things to happen in a strength that I did not have on my own. And I could not tell you like how it was possible that I was still functioning outside of like, it was only the Lord who, as if he was literally placing me in certain places and speaking for me and keeping me upright because I just wanted to like sit and stare at a wall or something. I just couldn't even process. But as far as like provision with all the chaos that it was, we did find out that, it was all going to cost a lot that we didn't have. And unfortunately, you don't plan for $40,000 surgery to have to pay within 23 days or whatever it was. So he provided the money for that within a few hours. He just did a lot of things that was like, okay, the Lord's going to, like, he's here. He's been here my whole life. I can point to places where I've seen him very clearly where he's interacted with me and taken care of me. And so now with this really, really big thing, it's not just going to disappear. So I can keep moving knowing that he's going to continue taking care of me. And he did. I mean, we still had wonderful family time. We had, the things I do remember from that time are like with Carrie and Gracie, just in our little unit, giggling at home or watching movies or playing outside in the sprinklers. And so he somehow, I can't even tell you how he did it. I mean, that's how he does things, But he fully sustained me and allowed us to get to the point where I could get this surgery that I desperately needed, apparently.
Yeah. I think it's been one of the things I've been most astonished about as we've listened to people's stories, that you think about tackling those kinds of big moments. And we've interviewed a fair amount of people that have had big moments. And they're all unique. And and you think what you would expect, I guess, is there's somehow this like surge of strength, or like, I'm ready for this and I can take this, and over and over and over again, what people talk about is actually, no, it's the experience of the strength of the Lord is when you're completely empty.
Yeah,
When
it
you
was
don't have anything
fully,
to
I am
give.
weak and he is strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I love that you say that, because I think sometimes people think, okay, how would I summon the strength to deal with news like that if that were to, if that were a call that were to come to me. And so I love hearing you say, no, actually it's the opposite. Is there was nothing that I could do. As the Lord, you experienced the Lord strengthening you. It wasn't something you felt doing, because you feel empty. You feel like there's nothing that you can give, because there's not, and you really are experiencing him carry you through. Yeah. So what was so you go into now a treatment process. What was that like as you took that? I mean, give us an idea, just for people to have some perspective. Give us an idea of when you walked out of surgery, or when you came out of surgery, what were you expecting the journey to be like after that? Kind of what were you facing?
So at that time, we didn't know how bad it was, if it was just that one little bump that was under my earlobe, or if, it was bigger. We had been told it's most likely not. The type of cancer that I had was very unique. It wasn't normally found in people my age. So they were like, it's probably not a big deal. We'll just get it out, you'll move on. But here are, worst case scenarios. And so some of those were like, we'll have to remove different facial nerves. Depending on if it's spread, you might need radiation treatment. You probably won't, but you might. This kind of cancer does not respond to chemo, so it's pointless, but you could try it, if it's bad enough, that kind of thing. But we were met, every corner we were met with, you probably won't need any of this, but we're going to tell you just in case. I needed all of that.
Wow.
So we, going into the surgery, obviously knew the risks, and came out of surgery. And apparently Carrie has a very unique story from this side, because I was under, very intense medication. And the doctor comes out and kind of that movie moment tells them like it was worse than we thought. My surgery was supposed to be like maybe an hour and a half, and it was like 3.5 to 4 hours long.
Wow.
So he just came out and told them that it was spread way more than they thought. So it wasn't just a bump on, my little adrenal gland or whatever is right there. It was spread up my face into my forehead and back into my like tonsils. And so it basically taken over the whole right side of my face and neck. And so that's why it took so long, was him, getting those cells out of there. And they did have to remove a facial nerve that was connected to my right eye. And so the doctor was explaining it as if like the whole right side of my face was not going to function again.
Wow.
And so like my eye would droop and my eyelid would be really low and my eyebrow would come really far down, that I would look like this completely different person. So my mom's crying. My dad is furious. Carrie apparently goes and punches a wall in the hospital. They're all very upset. Wow. And then they come in and I remember waking up from my surgery to them coming in and my mom just crying and saying, "You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful." Because I didn't look like any of those things. I looked like Darby. And so that was like the first thing that they were like, okay, the Lord is protecting you, because this medical professional who sees this all the time says that this should not be the case. And you look like Darby, like you look like yourself. And yes, I've lost some function in that side, but I don't look like any of the things that he described by any means whatsoever.
Yeah.
But they did, run tests on the cells, the cancer cells that they took. And so we had to go back into his office a little bit later and to get, further details, see if we needed treatment, stuff like that. And that's when he told me it was stage 4. And I started giggling. I just laughed in his office. I was like, "That's hilarious. Are you serious?" I thought it was so funny. It's not funny. It's inappropriate.
I know. Yeah. Where's the? Yeah.
It's highly inappropriate.
Where does the laughter come from? Is it just shock, or are you? Just,
it was just like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
cool.
This has been the strangest journey
keep
ever.
On
So
going.
yeah.
Wow. So I'm giggling, and which I don't know. I mean, the Lord calls me joy, and so maybe that was a part of it. But I just thought it was funny. So then they said you will need radiation treatment. We still didn't do the chemo thing, which I'm thankful for, because we didn't need to do that far. But I got a very special type of radiation treatment. There's photon therapy and there's proton therapy. And mine was proton therapy. It's very targeted. Photon therapy, the main kind that people get, can spread throughout your body and affect different parts of your body. And they didn't want that for me since I was only 26. So I qualified for the proton therapy, which is very targeted, does not spread. So the parts of my face and neck that got treatment were the only things that would be affected by treatment. So if I had gone the other way, I would have lost all my teeth in a few years and had to get dentures and maybe needed jaw problems and stuff like that. But since I got proton, all I deal with is some thyroid stuff.
Yeah.
Which, praise the Lord, I'll take that any day over needing a whole new set of teeth.
So how long does that takes place, that treatment takes place over the course of how many months? What's that journey like?
So that started in October, and it was 6 weeks long, and I went about 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. And they were some of them were an hour, some of them were 30 minutes. They had their people came up with a very unique plan. They would know way more than I do about this stuff. So there was a very unique plan in place for how much I needed and when I needed it and how frequently and stuff like that. So 6 weeks. I finished my treatment the day after my husband's birthday. I got to ring the gong
Awesome.
to finish my treatment. And sometimes twice a day, sometimes just once.
And y'all did a lot of that journey because that was during the school year and
Yes.
Carrie had to work. So you did some of that treatment.
Yeah.
Him running up and back and forth, him being
Yes.
here for some of that, you with your
Yes.
family. What was that like going through that? Separate. That must have been incredibly challenging.
I think that Carrie is one of the most wonderful people to be able to do that. I thankfully had my daughter with me and my parents with me, and my siblings would come down and visit me living in Houston. But Carrie was here
Yeah.
and alone, going to work with his wife and his daughter, not just like living somewhere else, but going through cancer treatment somewhere else. And I know that his heart, more than anything, wanted to be there with us. So he drove up every single weekend and spent the weekends in Houston. We had talked about beforehand, like maybe he'll come up every other. That's a lot of gas. But then when we were actually in it, he was like, I can't.
It's worth it.
Yeah, I'm coming every week.
Wow.
And he did. He came every weekend and spent all the time with us. And so it ended up being okay. I was so busy during the week going back and forth and taking care of Gracie. And we kind of formed our own routine there, thankfully. So we were busy enough to make it to Friday where we would see Daddy again. So.
Wow, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, I was trying to get my dates right before we started the show, but you said December of this last year was 1 year of you being done with treatment. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So December of 24
was 1 year done with treatment. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, okay. That's incredible.
It's crazy. I forgot. My mom had to remind me.
What an insane story.
I know.
What would you say as you look back on that, and it's still so fresh that it probably doesn't feel like you're looking very far back, and yet I'm sure there's elements of it that feel like a lifetime ago.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
You don't go through something like that without coming out dramatically changed. I would think there's all sorts of different perspective that you have on different things. And what would you say, two questions, and I'll try to remember them so that if you answer one and forget the other, then I'll try to hold on to them both. But there's two things that I'm really curious about. Number one, just what do you think was the biggest shift in you personally from before to after? Like what would you say has changed the most about who you are having gone through that journey?
I think that the suffering I had experienced in life was very kind up until this point. I'd gone through things that were hard, loss of family members and things like that, and they were hard. But this reminded me that I am human and that I'm not invincible. I think we forget that bad things can happen to us, to our physical selves. Yeah. And so we go through life thinking that we can't really be stopped, or that, that thing that happened to her won't happen to me. Like, chances of that are small. But I was healthy my whole life. There was no reason I should have this.
Yeah, you're like a great athlete, and just
thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Well, having competed against you in a few things, I can say,
I have beat
thoroughly
Kendall.
beaten me down. I can attest to that.
I did some counseling in the middle of this because of y'all, which was another community thing. But she graciously reminded me that I am human and I am, mortal. Like, I have a beginning and I have an end, and I can't go through life thinking that I can't be stopped because I currently was being stopped.
Yeah.
Wow. So this just brought me personally brought me down as a person lower than I've ever been. And so, like, that whole time during treatment, anything that I did, it was fully the Lord carrying me through. I don't know how Gracie was doing ballet and gymnastics. I don't know how I kept up with taking her to ballet and gymnastics in between treatments. And even my dad, like, he, by the grace of the Lord, was doing a job that was at home at the time, and he had he was getting paid for doing no work. Like, they were like, we don't have anything for you to do, but he was on the clock. So he was on Gracie duty. He was able to have that freedom. And then as soon as I finished treatment, he gets a job that requires him to go in office. And so it's just all these things that the Lord ordained to take care of us in that time. And my mom was able to take me to all my appointments, and Gracie has no idea. She just thought she got to live with her cool grandparents for a few months, But me personally was suffering deeper than I've ever suffered before. And it produced something like just really rich in my spiritual life. That I came out, when I got back home, it was February, and I found myself asking the Lord for suffering, because I was like, I'm okay. And I'm longing for that closeness again. That now that I was okay, I was like, Lord, I miss you in the ways that I had you before. And, maybe I should have watched my mouth a little bit, but it really produced something deep and personal between me and the Lord in a way that I've never had. So now when I waking up in the morning, I cannot do things apart from the Lord. And before I'd be like, yeah, I'll pray eventually. And now it's like, Lord, I need your help today. Like the first moment I wake up, he is who I'm calling out to. And I was not that person beforehand.
Wow, I've heard people use the phrase "the gift of suffering" in talking about just there are unique things that you experience with God and about God's nature that are always present. Obviously, He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. But there's unique ways that we interact with His nature and experience His presence in those moments of suffering. And a lot of parts of that is because of the way in which we need Him and are reminded of that mortality and that. And you would attest to that there is a gift of suffering that.
It's hard. It's very, very hard. Those are some of the hardest weeks of my life. But looking back, I miss them. Not because of radiation treatment or living with my parents or anything, but because it was like me and the Lord through and through, like the entire time. And I've never been so closely taken care of. At least to a tangible sense of the Lord is taking care of me. Obviously, He's taken care of me my whole life. But this was like I could taste it, like in the midst of it. So I find myself longing for those days again. Yeah. Which is crazy to me.
That's wild.
Absolutely insane.
The other part of that question, and maybe this is the same, so if I'm asking the same question, forgive me, but I kind of also want to know, what's the most unexpected thing that has come out of this? And the reason that may be a really terrible question is because if you've never been through anything like this before, of course, how do you know what would come out of it? But I guess, is there anything that has come out of this journey that has really surprised you in either a way that you've changed, a perspective you've had, or relationships with others, or just anything that you go, wow, I would have never guessed that this would come of this? Anything that stands out?
There's so many things.
Really?
Yes. We've mentioned community before, but I also mentioned that I don't like to be the problem. But my community said, we're coming in hot, and you're going to take it. Sure. So that surprised me. I'd never allowed community in that deeply into my life. But when we came home from my surgery, there was, Ashley had come and cleaned our house, and Juliana Dutton had written scripture and posted it all over my home on paper. So it was all over my house, all over my room, all over my bed. And that blew my mind. When I got home, they had restocked our fridge. They had stocked our freezer with all kinds of healthy food. There were people who came from NAC and from Dallas to be in the hospital for my surgery, and we were there at 4 a.m., so that was no small task, and they have children. And while I was gone, people taking care of Carrie and checking in on Carrie and making sure that he, wasn't suffering alone, because it affects him just as much as it's my body, but I'm his wife. That's huge. But also just the functioning of our family, I think, is the biggest thing that has not even surprised me, but just kind of blown my mind since all of it. Like just watching Carrie love me through all of that has been mind blowing. And just so much better than I mean, I knew I married a good man, but I didn't know how deeply the Lord was gifting me with Carrie as a husband. And then also just like we are on a firm foundation. Our family will not be a family that is shaken. And it is because of the suffering that we went through with all of that. So like even just right now there's always something, there's always one thing after another that's hard. And so right now we're dealing with more things that feel difficult, but we can remember who the Lord was in those moments and how he took care of us and how he sustained us. And so we can combat these hard things with that truth. So we are still walking on, solid ground in a way that we never really have before. And I see that playing out in Gracie. She prays a lot. And she is firm in the Lord. She knows that she is beautifully, wonderfully made, and that she is his and he is hers. And my biggest prayer as a mother would be that she grows up to love the Lord one day and pursue him and be, anchored in that. And I think because of what has happened, that is now her story. Like she now lives out a testimony. She doesn't even know that she was such a big part of it, but she was there with me for everything. She came to appointments, and she was only 2 years old and didn't know why mommy was wearing a weird thing on her face, but she was there. She saw me ring the gong. So it's a part of her story just as much as it is mine. And I think that has anchored her already in her faith, because she sees mommy and daddy walking in this strength and this faith and not being shaken. And so she is walking boldly and confidently, and she's a powerhouse. And I think it's all because of that. I mean, we were one thing and we came out something completely different. And I wouldn't trade it for anything ever.
Wow. Well, this may be a really tricky question, but there's people that are listening that either are right in the middle of, I'm sure, a different story, but similar circumstances where the unexpected has taken place, and either they got news they didn't expect, or life turned in a way they didn't expect, or whatever. And then there's people listening where that's going to happen. Yeah. And they don't know that that's going to happen. Put yourself in a situation, and I'm sure you've had this now that you've been through this journey. I'm sure you get these kind of calls actually, but put yourself in a situation where somebody calls and they share with you similar news that you once shared with others. Having been through what you've been through now, what's kind of the first few things you're telling that person as they're processing going through a really difficult thing for the kind of in the freshest sense? How are you helping?
The biggest thing that I've said over and over and over again, and that we have now seen play out in this, is truly that the Lord works all things for our good and his glory. And so if he can work my cancer diagnosis and surgery and my chaos of a year into good, then he can do all those things. And it was for his glory. There were people who did my treatment who learned about who God is. And that just by me being there, and that's not where I would have picked to do ministry, but it's where I was. And so if there is anything that I have truly lived out, it was that he worked that for my family's good and for his glory. And that has just been something really sweet to experience. But also kind of like we mentioned earlier, that Scripture says it plenty of times, that suffering produces, steadfastness and all these wonderful things. And it does. It doesn't mean it's not hard. That doesn't mean it's not painful or frustrating or confusing by any means. I had a lot of questions. I still do. But it produced something in me that I wouldn't trade for the world. And so you have to really dig your heels in. It's also, I think it was a crucial point that I could have turned a different direction. Getting a diagnosis like that, if I didn't have the foundation that I did, I could have turned to my own strength or
despair,
or
just
anything.
total,
Yeah, really anything. Anything else but Jesus. And thankfully, that's not the story that happened. The Lord was there and very present, and we didn't I think we told you this multiple times, like, well, we're gonna trust the Lord. Like, we don't really feel like we have any other choice, which was the best thing we could have done. And so I think digging your heels in and being as stubborn as possible in suffering and saying, I'm going to keep choosing the Lord, even though I'm confused and angry or hurting or tired. I think digging your heels in and deciding that allows you to see that he will work it for good. But I have said over and over and over again since this all happened that the Lord really does work things for our good and his glory. Yeah. He said it, and it's like, oh my goodness, I guess that's true. Wow. Wow. I've seen it play out. And what I've noticed is that people who beforehand wouldn't care to have these kinds of conversations about faith will now listen because they saw something happen. And that was because community was brought in and people were let in on our suffering. And we asked anybody and everybody to pray, and so now people, because they've seen our suffering so closely, listen to what we have to say about the Lord. And then it is that he works all things, even the hardest things, for our good and his glory. I could have never guessed that he would have worked a stage 4 cancer diagnosis for my whole family's good. But I mean, Carrie and I are tighter than we've ever been. Our family unit is tighter than we've ever been. We are like I said, we are standing on a firm foundation that will not be shaken. And I've never said that so confidently in my entire life. And it was because I got cancer that all that happened, that he worked it for our good. And it's a wonderful thing. It's hard. It's really hard, but it's been a wonderful thing.
Wow. Well, I can't tell you how much it means to us that you'd sit down with us and go through recount these stories. But I can't even imagine how meaningful and helpful it is for people listening, that I'm sure asking some of these same questions, maybe going through these same things. So thank you for coming and hanging out with us and sharing your story. Looking forward to the launch of your podcast.
Oh yeah, and, yeah. I'll let you know what that is. I really got to remember that name.
We're going to need some feedback.
Step one: know the name of your podcast.
Yeah, that's good.
It might be the hardest part.
That actually took us the longest. But seriously, Darby, thank you for coming by. Appreciate you guys listening. We've got more great guests to come. This is just the
tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, one of many this season. Blake, anything in the forecast to let them know about? We need to remind them of ways to connect with the show. Yes, and I mean, it's just been a while. We need to knock the rust off.
We've got some really good guests coming. I'm not going to reveal them. There's a couple on that list, though, that I've been trying to get on the show for years, and they have been just out of reach, but they've committed to being here. So
wow, that's good.
It'll be great. But if you have any suggestions for guests, we always accept those. Yeah. And you can email us at stc@fredoniahill.org. I think that email address still works. We'll find out pretty quickly. Maybe not. Maybe we'll just think nobody's sending us an email. So how about you just go ahead and send us an email whether you want to or not, and then and we'll appreciate that no matter what. But yeah, reach out.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll see ya. Adios.